Friday.
Sure, it's seven. Sure, it's
It is well, this one goes 7 to 8:15.
Oh, 7 to
That's
8.
where you're getting the 15.
Oh, okay, that's what I'm getting.
Side by talks.
Yes, you
Going
going back,
on,
yeah.
so
That 15 minutes meeting was budgeted for walking soapbox.
No. All right, we are live on YouTube.
Alrighty, thank you, Gretchen, and welcome everyone. Whoever may be listening at home. I just wanted to begin by saying we're not a quorum, so no decision will be made tonight about what we're here to discuss, but wanted to meet all the same to talk about some updates around data governance, data visualization for the HRC. So, but before we get into that, welcome. Let's go ahead and do some introductions. Let's begin with technically our guest, but really a guest of great honor. Chair Jackson is here, so Hamadi.
Well, thank you. I am Hamadi Jackson, Ward 5, Chair of the Human Rights Commission, and very honored to be here. And pass it back to you, Joaquin.
Thank you. My name is Joaquin. I'm a member of the Human Rights Commission, and I chair this community engagement committee. Robert.
Oh, alright, my name is Robert Marshall. I am a member of Ward 2. I am a commissioner on the Human Rights Commission and a member of this committee.
You bet. Gretchen Bennett, staff to the commission.
Alrighty. Do you have any public comment?
None received.
Alrighty. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Can't.
Oh, we can, of course. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm in rote here. Alrighty, so let's just jump into the content then, which is we had this conversation with staff several months ago around this kind of pie in the sky idea that we were having around trying to make what we do more accessible to folks, having it kind of revitalizing the HRC website, trying to be tracking data and changes over time and everything, all the good stuff in an equitable and responsible way. And a lot of things happened in the interim, and we kind of finally came back after a discussion back here in the committee and the commission to talk to staff, and that was our meeting on Monday. Dan, who was our HRS manager at the city, kind of helped us think more clearly around a roadmap for what's to come. And I'm grateful to Celine, who was there, and to Robert Dowd, our SPD liaison, was also in attendance, and Gretchen, of course, too. And we had a pretty good conversation around data inventories, the role of the police, kind of got us really thinking more explicitly around where is data coming from, how reliable it is, what are the sort of stories we want to capture, what are the sort of narrative we want to telegraph. And so I know it's been top of mind for us in conversations past, but I wanted to bring the conversation back here to this committee to kind of chew on, not take action on, but chew on and see what we can develop, if anything, a little bit further. Before I hand it over to Gretchen to correct me on anything I've already made mistakes on, I'm just going to share some of the stuff that I jotted down. I wasn't taking robust notes, but questions to kind of be thinking about thematically for this will be, again, I mentioned the data inventory, what are our outputs, what are our data services, where are we getting our data and how sustainable it is, who owns these data that we're going to be using, how do we build tools, what's the funding, what's government resources involved in this project. The term that Dan used again and again was the business intelligence proposal. Am I lying? No, that's what he said.
Right. Yeah.
So when we're talking about dashboards, when we're talking about security risks and concerns, who's the audience for the data that we're trying to gather and to present? How do we want to frame it? What wisdom is there? How frequently do we update it? Is it a monthly thing? Is it a quarterly thing? These are sort of questions that I want to explore with us. That data governance component, I think we have some pretty good clarity on what that might look like on our end, but kind of talking about that more fully. And I think that's some of the stuff I wrote down. Gretchen, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I think everything you said was correct. I think we were invited to have 2 next steps.
Yeah, thank you.
And he also encouraged us to think as part of that data governance piece about considering what our key performance indicators would be.
That's right.
Like what's our purpose? And then that would be something the group could monitor over time, as whether or not we're achieving those key performance indicators, but I think the two things that he highlighted for us to do is that data inventory that you explained well. Joaquin, you talked about how accurate's the data, who owns the data. You know, what would everybody's roles be in acquiring it and putting it up? So there's apparently a format that he's gonna share with us, so we can start plugging in our data pieces and evaluate the inventory. And then the second thing he did encourage us to think about is those key performance indicators. So stepping back and considering what is it we're trying to accomplish with this?
Yeah.
So we can make sure. An example I think that came up in the conversation, Joaquin, I think you were discussing encouraging more people to feel comfortable reporting. So that might be an indicator, is that we can evaluate our ideas through, would what we're doing help encourage people to report?
And what data or bisection of data lends itself to that project?
Yeah.
So for example, there was, I thought, a pretty healthy exchange between us and Lieutenant Dowd, for
Yeah.
example, around, okay, well, you want SPD data on a monthly basis, and here are the things that we share with you as a department, but what from that data can we use to build a picture that would promote public engagement with SPD in terms of reporting? You know?
Right.
And it may not, oh, like I was trying to enter the room.
Oh, thank you.
Linnell,
Linnell,
good to
welcome.
see you. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Great. It's good to see you.
Thank you all for the community belonging survey presentation and the slides and the summary. I am so grateful to you guys every single year. And this year I was especially worried since I had no time to do much. And yet I feel like what you guys did really ended up focusing on other groups that are underrepresented and still included the homeless input that shows worse than it was. And that's sad, but so necessary to know. So I'm so grateful to the work you guys do.
That's kind of you to say, Linnell, and only possible through the years of effort that you put in to make it so.
Everyone.
So,
We
well,
have a great
yeah,
village. We
yeah.
suck at inclusion apparently, but we have a great village.
There you go. Well, it's good to see you. Good to have you here.
Thank
So we
you.
don't have a quorum, which we knew in advance of this meeting. So
Okay.
we're having an open conversation around data visualization. I'd love your input at any time. Feel free. Talking about what data is useful to present and in what ways and in service of what aims. Also, when we're off the meeting, I've been reading your columns in the Salem Reporter, and I shout out to Linnell for that. So thank you for that.
Aw, thank you. I'm honored they're willing to print every now and then.
Yeah. All righty. Well, good to have you here. We were just having a conversation, Linnell, around. We had a recent conversation with city staff on Monday, kind of as a continuance of this conversation, which started a few months ago, which you may or may not recall. But we were really asked, we were encouraged to think about what stories we want to tell, and what was the word you used? Performance metrics, you know.
Oh.
Performance indicators.
Thank you. And you know, what data, if we're using data, which is good, we want to be data informed. What data do we need to tell what stories and to what end, right? So for example, if one of our goals is to encourage folks coming to SPD, for example, and or anybody and reporting incidences that they are experiencing and living, what data do we need to share about things that are already happening that promotes that value in the community? And so, for example, Lieutenant Dowd and I were having an exchange around what does that mean really? Because there are legitimate concerns around privacy and specificity and not revealing personal information. And then there was another conversation that Gretchen brought up, which was, I thought, important around, well, there's this fine line, there's this dance that we have to really, kind of this tango, we have to figure out where we give information that sparks interest in advocating for yourself and reporting things, but not perhaps so much interest where we get a bunch of public records requests and then all of a sudden we're in this snowballing effect of everyone wants to know this and that and the other thing, and all of a sudden everyone's information's out and air and dirty laundry, you know, and that's not what we want. And so, I'll finish my little preamble by saying that, the lieutenant offered examples of what that might look like. Things like, the number of, you know, kind of maybe categories to be determined, but the number of incidences of certain events that fell within certain categories, right? So if it's like defacement of property, or if it was things related to certain kinds of whatever, we didn't really go into specifics, but that level of analysis, which is what I had in mind anyways.
Yeah, it's kind of what my mind
Yeah.
went initially was if we just kind of just had, you know, reports by category, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like, that'd be a good way to do it, not releasing too much information, but then it also does encourage people, if they see that, you know, other people are reporting in this, you know, category, it does offer that encouragement that, okay, hey, you know, like other people are doing this, like there's strength in numbers when coming forward to report things. And so if you feel that other people are having those same concerns,
Yeah.
you're more empowered to bring your concerns forward.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I wanted to open up to everybody, take a step back for a minute, because it's the question that Gretchen raised, I thought was kind of a fundamental question to this whole project, which is, what is the role that data plays in promoting people's, you know, reporting? I think that's a legitimate question. I mean, I think, I don't want to get too bound down in the SPD question, because I think there are so many other data that we have at our disposal that I want to talk about too, but in particular around this issue, because it was discussed on Monday, you know, what equities are we weighing here? You know, I mean, are we, by having data from SPD, actually promoting interest and engagement, or are we opening ourselves up to risk in the sense of we're, you know, dissuading people from reporting if they think, oh, well, I report something and I'm going to be on the front page of the Statesman Journal, or I report something and I'm going to be on a dashboard. You know, I think I'm open to hearing from folks, and I really want to bring that conversation to this group, because I don't have answers to that. So any immediate reactions or instincts around that? What works in terms of promoting people's engagement? Is that a better way of phrasing it?
Thinking out loud, should I jump in or no?
Please.
Thinking out loud, you know, in the work that many of us do, lived experience counts for so much. You know, it's one thing to say that I can serve someone experiencing homelessness, but if I've had a silver spoon in my mouth all the time, no matter how much I care and want to serve, there's going to be something that's going to feel unrelatable. So when we have people who are serving, who've lived through some of the similar experiences, it offers so much credibility. And I feel like something like this could be similar, you know, going on the streets and seeing how many people would just be absolute no on reporting something to police. But if we have some people who aren't going to be on the front page, but are willing to share their story anonymously, like, you know, I experienced police being cruel to me, and I hope that was the exception and not the rule. But I did share my experience, and they did look into it. And I feel like, you know, systems change takes a long time, but I do feel like I was listened to and my input mattered, and that people were going to consider some changes. You know, so if you have people who have lived experience of going through their fear and reporting anyway, and saying that, you know, I didn't get a perfect answer. We can't change an entire system in a day or one experience, but I did feel heard. I did feel respected. And I did feel like they're taking the input seriously, whatever that might look like. And if some people have experienced that and are willing to share it, even without the details, but if I'm homeless and experience some, you know, significant cruelty or disrespect, and I'm willing to say that I feel like I, you know, I hope it gets so hard because it's personnel issues and you can't necessarily know what was ever said to the person. But I did feel like my complaint was taken seriously. I did feel heard, and I did feel like people are going to consider that for the future. So I think lived experience counts for a lot in all avenues, not just serving people who are homeless, but the ongoing, you know, just it's got to be hard to be a cop with so much negative perceptions, whether it's from people experiencing homelessness or just people in general. But if many people, homeless or not, would have a hard time reporting, but we could hear from some people who did and felt like even if they didn't get their perfect answer, they felt like it was taken seriously, then that lived experience could make a difference. And then from just a totally sideways angle that will connect, I work at a shelter where it's just overnight services. So we're constantly trying to figure out how can we help people kind of recover from some of their trauma and stress and survival mode as quickly as possible, because we don't have the daytimes with them to do intense case management. So we do a lot of mindfulness exercises, but one that really, really caught my attention was if I ask somebody, what are your life values? That's a big question. And I think most of us would have a really hard time answering that in 5 minutes, even though we feel very valued and, our values matter to us and we know we have them. But on the fly, someone saying, what are your life values? I think that would be hard to answer. But there was this side door that one of the exercises offers. And it was if you were to die and there was going to be a celebration of your life, what are a few things you hope people might say about you? And most of us, I think, could answer that question pretty easily. We might say, I hope they thought I was creative, or I hope they'd say I was kind, or whatever would come out of your mouth. That's a side door to what some of your values are. And I thought that that's really valuable if we can get our ladies to think about that, because then as we're having conversations, if they're willing to talk about that, I mean, we share that as like a paper exercise you can do if you want to and don't do if you don't want to. But surprisingly, most of them wanted to do it and wanted to share what their answers were. And then as we're having conversations about, their life, their path, their steps, we can ask, does that align with the values you have about yourself? And kind of connect it. So you don't have time to do that with every citizen in the city, but you might be able to say something like, most of us value being able to be taken seriously when we have a concern. Most of us value being seen and heard and respected. And then if we can connect that to lived experience, where some people were afraid to report, but did report and they felt seen and heard and respected. So that aligns with their values, and maybe that aligns with your values too, of what you want to have happen in your life. So kind of tying lived experience with life values. So maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a powerful example of the role storytelling plays in fostering belonging. And I think there's definitely a space for that sort of work and storytelling in the sort of project that we're looking at, whether it's SPD data or not. I mean, we need to highlight as much as we do, discrimination kind of challenges to belonging, affirm experiences where, to your point, Linnell, maybe things didn't go the way I'd hoped, or we didn't find the resolution we wanted, but I had a positive experience with X, Y, and Z that led to A, B, and C. And I want to share that story. And I think we need to uplift those stories, to your point, to promote folks' continued investment in those resources that do exist in our city. And perfect though they may be at times in certain situations, maybe even themselves promoting kind of inequities, they still exist, they're still real, they're still material, they're still robust. And we have to have folks investing in their success so that they are served in time. And I think that's an important lesson to kind of center in these conversations.
Then I don't know how to tie this in or if it would be worth tying in, but I found like as being a mom, I'm a shy person. I'm very shy. I hate talking in groups and it sucks that I have to keep doing that.
But you do it so well.
But I was very surprised at being a mom. I suddenly had a voice, because if my kids were also shy and couldn't speak up for themselves, somebody's got to do it. And I guess that's me. So I was very surprised that I could have a voice for others and for the people we serve in this work. Many of them either don't have maybe they're shy, but they're also so treated as less than human, that how brave do you have to be to speak up when that's your ongoing environment? But if there's some people who might not be able to speak up for themselves, but would value speaking up because it could make it better for others, sometimes, and I don't know how to say that without sounding like you're guilting people, but it's like, sometimes when we have a story to share, it's hard to share it. It takes a lot of bravery, but at the same time, it might make others have an easier path for also sharing their stories. And mostly we're not alone, but we don't know that we're not alone until some of us start that domino effect of sharing our stories. And it can be a domino effect. It's kind of like that. There's a Marianne Williamson quote, something about like shine. You enable other people to also step forward and shine and not hide in their shadows. But maybe somehow connecting it, like, number one, it might fit your values to speak up, because we all deserve to be seen and heard and taken seriously. And so it might tie into your values. It might tie into, sharing, I did this report, and it's really scary to share it, but I feel like it needs to be heard, and maybe it lets other people also have the atmosphere to be able to also choose to share their story. Maybe.
No, I think there's a lot of truth in what you shared, and I think we even see that borne out in even stuff like the community belonging survey, which I presented on Monday, to your point, Linnell, where, I think it was like folks who said that they knew of the HRC and were aware of the HRC were 14% more comfortable in reporting thing, and so we know that this awareness, this being able to identify with other folks publicly, or at least, there's some evidence that has the kind of effect that we're looking for, and, it's definitely a storytelling component, but it's also a data component. I think there's a lot of merit to that, but I appreciate your comments, Linnell. I wanted to bring it to this group to kind of chew on that, because the lieutenant and I were kind of going back and forth about it, and I didn't really feel strongly either way. I was very open to understanding better what folks' thoughts were around the effectiveness of it, the solvency of that approach. But I wanted to pause and welcome Celine. How are you? Maybe just welcome Celine.
Hey, sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry, I'm super late, and not there in person. So it's been a long day.
And we understand. We appreciate you showing up any way you can.
All right.
Celine was there at the conversation on Monday, so I invite her to share anything any takeaways that you had from Monday.
It was great for Dan to lay like the framework in a sense for the data visualization committee. I think we're supposed to be working on like data inventory today?
We will. We haven't gotten so specific yet about that. We're talking right now. I paused for a moment, Celine, to talk about or open up discussion around there's kind of the role in data and what worked or didn't work in terms of promoting folks' interest in reporting. So I think that was a comment that we got from the lieutenant, which was it was unclear whether what would work and to what end that data would, you know what I'm saying. So that's what we're talking.
Yeah. What did you guys cover, like, briefly?
Well, briefly, I think Robert spoke to kind of the value of data demonstrating the folks, kind of the landscape of what's going on, and you can identify and see yourself in that data. And I think Linnell spoke pretty movingly and comprehensively to the value of storytelling and highlighting folks' positive experience with certain resources, whether they be SPD, whether they be HRC or any other city resource, navigating their journeys of discrimination, and to kind of showcase those stories, those data, in service of promoting those resources and people's engagement with them. Is that fair summary?
I'm in agreement with those. I don't have anything to add.
That's okay. I think we're all caught up though. Hamadi, do you have any reactions, to any of that?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah,
Okay, I am on my motorcycle right now, so I'm in my helmet. So if you can't hear me, then I apologize. But I would say we just need to make sure that we lean into our partners. Maybe if we can figure out some kind of way to, I mean, I guess the overall is making people feel comfortable in reporting so that way we have the data. So I think that needs to be a focus in whichever way that we can continue to lean in or, encourage more, if it's more outreach, if it's more, like they have the community violence thing, if there's something else that we can do around that. Just, I think overall that's what my takeaway was. But other than that, like I thought the presentation was great. I thought it was all great. I love what Monel said. So that's pretty much what I got. So
thank you. And we can hear you loud and clear. And I don't know if you heard Robert, but he said,
It's a remarkable quality.
yeah, remarkable. We can hear you just fine. Okay, well, I appreciate taking time to talk about that, but I do view this question as kind of central to what we're doing here is, does this approach even work? And so I know we're not taking action or anything, because we don't have quorum, but I appreciate that conversation. So let's spend a few minutes talking about data inventories and kind of thinking through the sorts of data we want to see represented in this pilot year of this project. And there's been a lot thrown around from SPD data to environmental justice data that the EPA, I think, was brought up a couple meetings ago, but I didn't want to get specific. Maya just mentioned, the gun violence data, which, we don't hear about, Gretchen, but I think is relevant. Not that it has to be in this iteration of this data project right now, but I think things like that are relevant. I know they're not always regular, but I think the fact, for example, that gun violence against our unhoused neighbors has gone up, 20% is outstanding and notable and critical to know and to capture and to really demonstrate, to really, not promote isn't the right word, but to really, have as part of our public conversations. And we don't get that data. We haven't gotten that report formally through the commission. We just read about it online so anyway, stuff like that I think is important. But Linnell, you have your hand raised.
I guess just going back to data and stories, one thing that happened a few years ago was when this community survey was starting to happen, UGM hosted like a public forum. And it was very controversial because they spent a lot more time talking about their services than allowing time to speak. And it was very controversial, but we were expecting much more time for people to speak. And we had gone to the streets and asked people, please speak up, please come and attend, please share your story and what you're experiencing. And so many people had come up and it's like, but I'm shy, I'm scared. It's scary to talk in front of people. And it was like, it is. And how are they going to know if we don't say something? And I had at least 4 people who were so nervous. I mean, one woman even asked me, like, should I wear heels? Am I supposed to wear a dress? She didn't know, like, what am I supposed to do if I need to be heard? But 4 people came up to me afterwards, one of them was in tears. It's like, we didn't get the time that we were supposed to have, but just saying something changed something in me. It made me feel like maybe I have a voice I didn't even know I had. And I feel like that's a story piece, but I think it's also a data piece, because when we can hear that people just doing it can make something better in your own head, it almost like validates your own worthiness. And whether the system changes or not, it does something inside of you. And I had 4 people basically telling me that, some of them in tears. So I think that kind of overlaps the stories with the data. The data reflects that if you're able to share your story or make your request or share your complaint, it changes something inside of you, regardless of what happens with the situation. And I thought that overlap was really interesting. That's all.
That is interesting, and I think I don't really have any answers to that, Linnell, but I think it does raise questions around being more explicit around the role of storytelling in this project, because that really hasn't been our focus. I mean, we've been thinking a lot about the data and the data and the data and how do we, I mean, some of that is comments that people give. There's like elaborative sections in our survey, for example, but I'm really thinking more about the story component. I want to hear what other people think about it. Also, it sounds like there's some things that you want, Robert, for your.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, if we were, talking about, data inputs and you were talking about like environmental justice and something brought up, like gun violence, I think really one of the key things, and I mean, if we're looking to just start and try to just get the airplane off the ground, the community belonging survey data seems like a logical place to start. I mean, it was even asked at the presentation on Monday. There were some questions and everything about comparing and contrasting data from previous years, and I think being able to have a couple of years worth of data on a dashboard to be able to visualize that and compare and contrast, it's helpful. I mean, if we're just looking to pilot with one or two, I would say I think that's probably the primary, my opinion, where we should really start anything on data inputs for it, and then looking at other pieces. So that was just what I was going to add in terms of looking at data inputs. I would still say that the community belonging survey is still going to be my recommendation.
So yeah, thank you. Anybody else have any reactions to that?
Are we basing this off of the 4 different, I guess, data pieces we discussed on Monday?
We haven't talked about that explicitly yet, Celine, so go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh my
bring it
God.
up.
No, I mean, I'm sorry. Because we discussed the SPD, bias crime data, having that in there, the reports from Gretchen, that she receives from the community, and then the community belonging survey data, and what's the other one? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
outreach data.
Oh, yes, our community outreach, I mean, the newest data in a sense. But I guess we could add to that.
We could, so thank you for bringing those 4 data inventories into the conversation, because that's what we were kind of focusing on in our meeting on Monday. And so basically, the idea was floated, well, let's just do one of these. And it's totally possible, and I'm open to that. But I think we discussed the merit of having these be in conversation. It's almost hard to have these in isolation. I mean, there's a lot of merit to, well, first of all, there's a lot of data to unpack, a lot of narratives to be drawn from the community belonging survey. And there are limits and there are promises of that data set. One of the limits is that it's annual. Another limit is that it's only, anywhere between 500 to 1,000 people, every year. But I feel like that data becomes stronger when it's a conversation with our monthly reports from SPD and from Gretchen, but those are very, the landscape of discrimination and the like. To Linnell's commentary around storytelling and affirming positive experiences and the value and the role of that in promoting access to resources. Celine's 4th data category that she brought up was our outreach efforts. And these data that we're going to be collecting from outreach is going to be new and fresh. And for example, very mappable, as opposed to like where things are happening, they're going poorly, where things are happening, where we're reaching out, that's very mappable. We can hear folks' input on what's going on, to Linnell's point, we can hear directly from business owners and our unhoused neighbors and the Latino community and the Black community. We can do all these different things and kind of document that in a more qualitative way but it's also very robust. And I feel like for me personally, I mean, we're not deciding anything, but I think having at least these four, but also not too many more, because four is a lot, then we gotta figure out how do we do that, but having these four to me seem kind of elemental beginnings, because these are in conversation with one another, and they're also just, if you want to look at it this way, they're just what we do on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, if we're trying to report what HRC is doing, then this is what we do. I mean, we hear these things, and this is a big effort every year, and so we do every quarter, we go out and we talk to people and stuff, and so anyways, so I'll add that. I'll add a second thing briefly. That was brought up just that we're all having the same conversation, which was that these four data inventories, these kind of, downstream data that we're going to be uploading one day, hopefully, need to be kind of starting from the same time frame. And so the exception to that, I think, is the outreach efforts, because those are so new, but like the SPD data and Gretchen staff report data goes back, well, Gretchen's been here 11 years, and that's great, but we don't want to get so historical where it's not a conversation of other data. And so we were thinking about having the data go back to 2020, for example, which was the year that the survey began after it had been on pause for a couple of years. So things like that were also mentioned, and I'd love to hear people's feedback on. Am I all over the place too much, or are we?
No, I mean, I like the idea of those four data points, and I agree with everything you're saying, that they kind of do, build upon each other, and, a lot of those numbers, and data is data that we get monthly, so it's a good way for, the public to visualize, that, and I agree with the timeframe. I also think, and I get that, wanting to start, with the same timeframe. In 2020 being the year, and I think we brought this survey back, but do we want to maybe go, 1 or 2 years prior to that, 2018, 2019, for those that are interested in kind of analyzing, the pre and post COVID trends.
Yeah, I'm open to that. I think a lot of it has to do with how we have to be very specific and clear about what the data means that we're presenting, right?
Yeah.
So we can say, okay, well, we go back 5 years pre-COVID, and whatever it ends up being,
Yeah.
I mean, we can have that conversation. I think there are merits to that. I think there are also merits to that for a more subliminal reason, which is that also predates the state's hotline. And so the reason I say that is because it's great that the state's a resource, but the state, as far as we can tell, is taking up a lot of those complaints, where the city used to play that role. And so we can see the pre-state bias hotline, post, and so we can see how that may have changed what was being reported, and at what frequency and at what rate. Long term, definitely not on the table right now, but long term, I would love to have the state data be a part of what we report, but we haven't developed that relationship sufficiently. But
The DOJ data.
the DOJ data, that's what I'm saying. That's
Yeah.
yeah, the DOJ data. I asked about that. So what are people's reactions to what Robert just shared around going back a few years before the pandemic and seeing tracking at least some of that data for that period of time?
I mean, I think that would be a good start. I don't see any problem with it. I think it'd be nice to see the differences. And then I guess going back a little bit to Linnell's, like, where she wanted the qualitative storytelling portion, maybe we could have an area where if we get like statements from our community outreach when we're going to like businesses or even just engaging people, if there's certain statements they make and they say they'd love to share XYZ, like, I don't know, if we do this on a regular basis, maybe we can share those annually. Like, I don't know, it could be on a page, just like thoughts people have about the Human Rights Commission in Salem or outside of Salem. If it's people that aren't in Salem that are just like, hey, you guys are cool.
And we are cool.
I guess my question with the receiving information and thing for a story section is making sure that the way that we're collecting that will protect people from those Freedom of Information Act and everything, both in that moment, but then also in the future. Because someone really might, say, okay, yeah, I'm gonna fill out this form, and they're gonna fill out, like their name and, they're comfortable with it, in that moment. But then, 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road, anything, life situations change.
Right.
But when they submitted that, that comment, they said, yeah, I'm comfortable with my name, and, they submitted that, but then they don't want that information. How can we make sure that we're protecting people's identities should they change their mind about that later?
I mean, these wouldn't be like very descriptive statements. I mean, they'd be pretty vague, like if they're positive things or experiences they found with us, not like very specific.
Yeah,
Identify-
like, HRC helped mediate, I'm really grateful for the HRC's mediation, X thing, Ward 7 resident. That could be,
Yeah.
that could be like the level of detail.
Yeah, I think we'd want to just make sure anything, however, we're collecting that and we're allowing for people to submit that we're not providing places, like say that they were providing them a platform to submit that information and thing electronically.
Sure.
That the collection form doesn't have any place for identifiable information.
Yeah.
And then we also post a disclaimer for people, or like ahead of time, hey, like please refrain from using.
And part of it may be we don't do that at all, and we go out to the public and we talk to folks and they give us permission to use something, maybe, I don't know,
Yeah.
I think it doesn't have to be even electronic at all, potentially. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we could go out there and collect it. I mean, just saying, we're gonna want to make sure, however we go about doing it, whether or not, like we're, handwriting them down, or, we're, recording people's conversations, however we're doing that. We just need to make sure that, we're doing so in a way that we're not going to jeopardize their personal identifiable information.
Absolutely.
So,
And I think there's one of the strengths of the data governance committee, which we'll set up once this is being piloted, is it will iteratively review our processes and what's up and in what way is it being managed. And so we don't, not wedded to this, but I think the idea I have is like quarterly, they meet quarterly, and they for a couple hours and talk about everything that's up, and we'll always be asking those kind of interrogative questions of how are we doing, what are we doing, how are we ensuring people's privacy and personal information is secure. That's not an answer other than it's.
No, I appreciate that. I just wanted to, because some of the things that, like Linnell was speaking to about some of those stories and things, that some of those stories, can get personal in nature.
Yeah.
And, if somehow somebody's name is leaked into that story and it gets posted and somebody's like, oh, I'm gonna, as we mentioned at the start of this meeting, freedom of information request and everything, a bunch of data. Last thing we want anything is for someone's, story and everything to be out there on Front Street with their name and other information attached to it.
So one potential workaround for that might be to say, we're not doing anything right now because we can't, but it might be, we will never collect or use people's names ever.
Yeah.
That could be one rule, for example, or we
Yeah.
only will collect. So that's a negative thing. We'll never do that. Could also affirmatively say, we will only ever ask of you your ward.
Yeah, I think that
whatever,
I think that's a safe way to do it is, and then whenever we refer to that in the story,
Yeah.
as you said, Ward 7 resident.
Yeah.
Said, Ward 7's experience was.
So,
Okay.
but these are the sorts of things that we need to be talking about as this process matures is, we say we want this and it involves this, but what does it really mean? How do we really juggle all of that? And Celine's doing something. Thumbs up. Hey, thanks.
Homeless Alliance had one of their committees that I serve on, created a dignity lens, and it addresses like, are we presenting a story in a way that enables dignity and humanity, but it also addresses the aspect of what permissions do you have, and is that for this moment, or does it protect the person into the future as well? And I can email that to Gretchen. I feel like you guys already have a handle on it because this is what you do. But if there was a dignity lens like bullet list that was helpful, I can share that. But
That would be very
you've got
welcome.
Values going for you.
I have it. I was, if I didn't already email it to you all, it was gonna go in your next full commission meeting
Oh,
packet.
great, yeah, but
Yeah.
that's a great
Yeah,
idea.
it's a great
Thank
idea.
you, Lynell.
Yeah.
So anyways, I'll leave it there. I mean, if anyone wants to, if anybody has anything else top of mind related to this, feel free to bring it up, but those, kind of a summary of the sort of things that we were tackling in that meeting. Would you say, Gretchen? That's right.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
So I think we look forward to Dan's, guide, to help us continue that conversation and actually arrive at a place of understanding and that we can take action on, but we haven't received that yet.
Correct.
So. Anything else? Anything else on the agenda, Rich? I can't remember.
We do, for example, I don't know if you wanna touch base on the engagement that we did. Any kind of debrief, or if you wanna set up a next one.
Yeah, so, thank you again for those who attended, Celine, Hamani, Robert, we went out to the community, Gretchen too. We went out to the community and met with business owners primarily in the downtown area, and that went very well. And has already resulted in some people reaching out to Gretchen, and so very, very glad to see that. And so we're gonna do it again.
Yes, we are.
And it's gonna, as I said, it's gonna be at least a quarterly thing. Which I know there's quite a bit of scheduling involved in these things, so. But let's start talking about maybe where we wanna go next and the sort of communities we wanna target. Again, it doesn't have to be businesses, it can be faith communities, it can be neighborhoods, it can be whatever. So if anybody has anything that leap to mind, when they think about what's important to them and what's Salem's facing right now, then go ahead and let us know.
Would this be August or September?
Okay, that's another good question is when. So we did this in late June, am I lying?
July 3rd.
July 3rd.
Yeah, the start of the fiscal year.
Start of the fiscal year. So, we're looking at September, October,
October 3rd.
October 3rd. Yeah, we could do it.
We're
We
just
can
gonna do the-
stick to the date,
gonna
but
do-
so early fall.
We could, that's a Thursday.
Early fall. I'm also happy to use one of our times, our meeting times to do this too. I think we did meet on a Wednesday. That was the 3rd was a Wednesday.
We did.
So anyways, it's early fall. The weather's still nice enough to go out and about for long periods of time, hopefully. So where are we going? Dream with me here. It's early fall. Where are we going? Who are we talking to?
If school's back in, then I say let's hit the universities and maybe we can reach out to some of the guidance counselors or something from the local high schools and maybe we can drop off something to them.
Universities? What would you say, Robert?
I was gonna say his audio changed. Put your motorcycle helmet back on.
So I heard universities reaching out to students and staff there. Would that be Hamadi? So Salem has a lot of college universities. I mean, we have Temecula, we have Western Salem campus, we have Corbin, we have Willamette. Are you talking about every one of them, or what are you thinking about?
All of them.
Okay, so go, and that's possible.
Yeah.
If we each have a group that does one or two campuses,
Yeah.
it's a lot more driving.
Yeah, or if we, depending on how many people we had and everything, and then we just sent 2 people to each campus for
Yeah.
2 hours to
Yeah.
Maybe
go
campuses.
to go back to school.
Corbin is really close, like 15 minutes from my grandma's house. We can all get food with my grandma.
Yeah, I call Corbin. I call being more cute
Yeah.
for Corbin University.
Grandma's got that good cooking, I'll tell you that. Okay, so places of education.
I'm not opposed to that entirely. It's something that didn't cross my mind initially, but I also think it's potentially, as Amadi was saying, it's people are just coming back to school. It's a good way to educate you know, some of those students that might, you know, be new to the Salem area about the Human
That's
Rights
true.
Commission. And then it's also a good way to, you know, get their involvement, you know, depending on, you know, their course of studies, you know, either participating, you know, in the meetings or anything as, you know, either a guest or, you know, joining, you know, some of the, you know, smaller committees and everything as a member for, you know, X amount of time, you know, might be something that, you know, sparks their interest while they're here. I think a challenge with that would be finding a way to get onto every college campus and everything on the same day. So if we're thinking, you know, doing it like we did the last one where we all meet here and then we, you know, disperse to our individual sites, would require deconflicting schedules with all of these different campuses. And then, you know, we would need to get, you know, invitations first ahead of time, you know, prior to arriving, and then, you know, also determining, you know, like what, you know, kind of, you know, security measures they might have in place, you know, for guests that are coming on. So I think there's a lot more logistics that plays into, you know, doing university campuses than, you know, walking around downtown Salem and walking into businesses. So those are just things to consider.
Yeah. Yeah, I think yes and no, right? I think if we want to meet with staff, that's an extra level of coordination. But I mean, most university students walk on campuses and talk to people, I mean, right? Or am I missing?
Yeah, I've never been to college.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
I can go to college.
I feel like people walk on the Willamette campus and, you know, they can.
Yeah, I guess, but you know, there's a difference between just walking onto a campus and everything, and then being in ghost town, there's nothing going on.
That's
It's
true.
in their dorm room and study.
True.
And then there's walking onto a campus and everything, and there's, you know, like fairs and events going on, and,
Yeah.
you know, the place is very lively.
Yeah, we can see if we can get
I would hate for, you know, commissioners and anything to block off, you know, a portion of time out of their schedules and then show up onto a campus and everything that's, you know, for a lack of better terms, is done. And it's at a tabling events where I've had two people walk up to a table and, you know, I thought to myself, there was 1,000 other things I could have done for this 2 hours. And I interacted with one person, and it's because they didn't even want the information, they just wanted the piece of candy off the table. And so, you know, I think, you know, planning it to where, you know, like we're going to get some engagements, you know, doing, you know, door knocking in downtown businesses.
Guaranteed.
You're guaranteed some sort of level of engagement because you're choosing your own adventure. I mean, like you're proactively going out there and, you know, interacting with people, and you know that those businesses are going to be open. Some of them were, I shouldn't say all of them, because, you know, we did encounter that too, where, you know, some businesses were closed, which prompted, you know, an idea that if we're going to do downtown again, doing it, you know, during the day or, you know, on the weekend. So I think just making sure things are going on and that there's going to be an audience available is important in determining where and when we go next.
I could offer to do a kind of a pre-check at all of the campuses to see, like, would a table in the dining hall, for example, be workable, or are there professors that would be interested in a quick class wrap where you come in for the first couple minutes and introduce yourself and pass out info sheets? Or I guess it would depend a little bit, but might be different models. Or is there a professor's staff meeting that, you know, a couple people could come to? We could set up different engagements based on the school, you know, and send to
Yeah,
people, have it be decentralized.
Yeah, do they do morning announcements? Can they come and get the microphone for the
Sure.
first 2 minutes? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think colleges do morning announcements.
Yeah.
Well, they do.
It's dating, that's still
I'm sure they can do,
but.
Yeah. I don't know, my experiences of campuses is you go, if it's during school hours, you go and people are walking around, you know?
Yeah.
That's been my experiences, kids, you know, college students. And I agree that there's a lot of value in reaching out to that demographic as opposed to faculty, though they're important to faculty. But if you're from outside of Salem, this is your home for your 2 to 4 years, whatever your college experience is. And so we want to get you in the fold. We've had commissioners who have been college students while they've been commissioners. Zeke was a college student at Willamette.
So if I'm hearing you right, one idea would be to just identify a time during the school day
Yeah,
and try to pay attention to when classes are in between. And then send folks out with clipboards like we did before to try to catch students when they're crossing like to fro library, classes, dining hall.
I'm trying to find a ways to ease the kind of burden of like real a lot of coordination across a bunch of different
Yeah,
campuses. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
But Chemeketa will be very different, because Chemeketa's campuses are all over the place and they're
Yeah.
not as campusy as other campuses are.
you can go to that main building
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
and show up and talk to
too.
people.
There are people who are always hanging out there in the big, beautiful lobby area, right, in
Yeah.
front of the student services and the main campus.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Willamette, if you go to the green area, the people are always walking the quad, what do they call it? What do they call it? The quad?
I'm not
I like
positive
it.
about the quad, but I'm thinking where the duck race is, you know, where
Yeah.
is the,
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
right in front of the Hatfield Library.
Yeah.
You know, in that area.
There's usually like a student affairs committee. That might be another option.
What does that mean? Is that like student government or is that?
So usually there's like a group of students that represent like various organizations throughout the campus, and they might come together just to share, like they usually have a speaker depending on time of the year. October they may not. And then they also share like what's going on in their organizations. Usually the student affairs presidents, obviously in attendance, and other people that represent various organizations.
Okay, so
that's
it's
what it is.
higher ed, any other places? That come to mind in the immediate future? The higher ed is just good calendar wise because it's the early fall, people are coming in.
Yeah.
And it's pre-finals and midterms and stuff, probably.
It is
but-
midterm.
Yeah, I think it, yeah. I would, yeah, I'm okay with, you know, kind of making that, you know, the area of focus.
Any other reactions?
It's kind of also just a good way, I mean, it's new, so I mean, it's kind of also, you know, like our welcome to Salem. Kind
Yeah.
of too, you know, like we can, you know, be some, you know, like the first. You know, folks from, you know, like the city of Salem, you know, like welcome them, you know, hey, welcome to Salem, this is what the Human Rights Commission does. You know, they can vote with us, or, you know, if you're exploring other avenues, please visit, you know, the city website and see, you know, what sparks your interest. But I think I think this could also help a lot too, with some of the goals from the LGBTQIA committee and everything, and increasing membership. And you know, when we did, Gretchen and I were partnered up and everything, we stopped by the library and we mentioned the LGBTQIA committee and everything, we got, it sparked a lot of interest, you know, amongst, you know, the people and everything, you know, one of the businesses there. So I think, you know, could be a way to meet some of those goals and objectives for some of our other committees and everything to increase engagement and membership. So
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with higher education for October. Not like we can vote on anything because we don't have a quorum, but
Okay. We're talking about.
One logistics suggestion might be, I noticed the third Wednesday in July did generate a good amount of participation.
Mhm.
That could be a cadence if you're thinking quarterly. I could send out a poll and find out how many people might want to sign up for first Wednesday
Of the respective months.
of their respective month. You know, we could do July, October, whatever
Yeah, totally.
you know, I suppose that's January and April. And just throw it out. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we gotta start somewhere and
Yeah.
we can start there. And the difference would be, to Robert's point, is if we could go earlier in the day. or maybe-
Sure.
So,
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. And I should point that out. It wouldn't automatically be the evening.
Yeah.
That might vary depending on where we're going,
people work, it's the problem.
right?
Yeah.
But with enough advance notice, sometimes people can take time, depending.
Yeah,
Pros, cons.
the hard part is, you know, how comfortable do I feel asking people to take time off work?
Yeah, it's a fair
That's-
question.
That's, you know,
you're not necessarily asking, I mean, some people and anything might, you know, work in a workplace and then does offer, you know, some sort of flexibility or,
Yeah.
you know, you know, what they're doing on the Human Rights Commission, everything aligns with, you know,
Sure.
some of their job duties, so, you know, it would technically be considered billable hours.
Yeah.
The other option is tutoring, is that, you know, like some universities.
I need that job. I can build these out. I'm sorry.
Let's talk after this.
Yeah.
The other piece of that too is, you know, some of these campuses and everything do have, you know, evening activities. That do stretch into, you know, the evenings, and maybe just a matter of, you know, snooping through their websites to find out, you know, what's going on
Yeah.
there. You know. Finding that information. I mean, I'm definitely not the person to go snooping around in college websites, but somebody set up for the task to find out what universities might have evening things going on. Could be a way to,
Yeah.
then we're not asking people to do things during the day, so.
Yeah. It's a lot to think about. I think we've had to think about it, which is good, but I like that idea. I appreciate that direction. I think that's got some potential. Yeah. 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 I went to college totally out of state, totally didn't know anything. And a big part of my experience of community engagement was, you know, it was right on your doorstep. I mean, people came to you, hey, you know, here's what's wrong with the city. Why don't you get you involved? You know, and living in New Haven was a big part of our experience, because there's a lot of wrong in New Haven, you know, because the university doesn't pay any taxes and the city runs a deficit, but the university owns like 80% of all taxable real estate. And it's just like crazy. So
You get a low tax.
there's a lot of injustice going on there, economic adjustment. But I mean, people came to your doorstep. They're like, you need to get involved because you live here for 4 years, or you're part of the problem, basically, because the institution is part of the problem.
Yeah.
We have to help make this right for New Haveners who are here before you and here after you. And a lot of people in my university make lives in New Haven. They like staying in New Haven. It's like a large rate of people staying. And so I'm not saying we have to do that, but to your point around the value of going out and saying, hey, you're here. Let's make the most of it while you are here. I think there's a lot of value to that. And definitely an impact on my life. Celine?
Another thing to note, so like Willamette, October 4th is their family weekend, for the 4th through the 6th. So
She's got all, she's our
I
insider.
got the receipts, but it's good. All right. Go ahead.
I don't know what they do for it, but I just know it exists.
Human Rights Commission.
What about to meet all the parents?
It
Wow.
like they don't even say what they do for it. It's just like it's a student or a weekend event where students and families are brought together, and that's the description.
No, that's fantastic, because they always put art stuff on, performance. I mean, the people are always on campus. That's great. We should.
Yeah, and parents are always worried, and I think children and everything are just gonna waste their time and everything while they're at university. So if we're there providing opportunities for people to get engaged,
Yeah.
then students are gonna be more apt to sign up while their parents are standing around, so they don't
Yeah,
feel like they're
but part of
squandering
college is wasting a little bit of time. I mean, it's a little bit of, you don't know what you're doing and you're making a mess of everything that you touch.
And then let's see,
Not
to touch
meaningful.
on like Joaquin's note, there's always the conversation between changing like Yale or New Haven's name to Yale, right? The city of New Haven. That's always a lovely conversation too.
They want to change New Haven's name to Yale.
Yeah, that always comes
Oh,
up
wow.
every
know
so
that.
often because of how much expansion the college has had.
Oh, yeah. Like farcically, you mean like as a joke? Or you mean-
Yeah, it would
yeah.
never happen. It would never pass. Like
you're opening a can of worms, Celine. I have a lot of feelings about this. Anyways. Yeah, not a lot of choice words for that place, but, yeah. Anyways. Okay, so good. Well, anything else, not to move on, but we're gonna move on. Any awareness communications?
Well, I wondered if you'd like me to fashion something out of all of the belonging survey materials for the next communication, like the slides that Robert created, or anything from your remarks, or You know, I could
Not sure if anything's salvageable from my remarks, but we can use Robert's.
Robert's
presentation.
slides
I
and,
thought your remarks were fantastic.
Oh,
yeah.
But,
Something out of that, to
Sure.
help make sure everybody sees it. Great, will do.
and I saw your communication about the pit with the picture and, right?
Yeah, that was last time, yeah, and so then this time I'll do something more on the belonging survey.
Yeah.
Okay. I do have a couple of other small items, if it's
Please.
okay.
Please.
A member of the commission at a previous meeting had suggested like an Instagram takeover, and there was some conversation about that we could do.
Okay,
So our communications person is excited to talk with whoever wants to talk with her. I think Ilana is interested in that, and if others are interested in having a little powwow with our communications person, let me know if you think that would be fun, and we can
sure.
start mapping out what that might look like.
I volunteer Ilana.
Yeah, I volunteer Alana too. I'm here.
No, that
I'm
makes
not really
sense.
camera
I
ready,
am not,
so.
And we can build it from there on the
You will.
floor.
In front of a camera, I think.
In front of a camera, yes, but like. Developing content
Oh,
for
yeah.
social media, absolutely. I'm good at Canva and everything, but I do not like managing social media accounts.
Yeah.
And another thing, speaking of Linnell's point about open mic formats, you'd asked around a follow-up for the idea that we'd had last April of a Fair Housing Council of Oregon
Yes.
open mic.
Look,
So I checked back in with them, and that led to a conversation. They brought about 4 of their staff into a quick check-in to see. They don't think they have capacity for next April to time with Fair Housing Council. In fact, they're doing an event in Salem next year that relates to intellectual and developmental disabilities and fair housing issues. But they very much wanted to join the planning around Salem Speaks Up.
Oh, great.
And so they've identified an employee to join the planning committee for Salem
great,
Speaks
great.
Up. And they want to bring resources to that event to
Okay.
help sit with people after and file complaints.
Oh,
So-
great.
So
That's
that,
even-
yeah,
That's fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I thought that was terrific. So I wanted you to be aware of
And when
that.
does that work begin?
Yeah, well, it's,
I know we talked about it at the commission.
absolutely. I wrapped up the polling of the prior committee to find out who's interested. I wrapped that up today.
Okay.
And now I'm gonna launch a poll to schedule the first planning meeting, which will be in August.
Yeah.
And the event will take place December 10th.
Great.
Cause it's always annually December 10th. So mark your calendars, November 20th, Transgender Day of Remembrance, and December 10th, Salem Speaks Up.
Great.
Those are both anchored events.
Well, that's good. I think if they can't do an event now or until next April, then that's the next best thing.
Yeah.
How they can do that.
I think it'll add value to Salem Speaks Up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So FYI, just a couple little
Yeah,
slides for
thank
me.
you.
Oh, forgive me, one more. I believe, we know, we've got someone not available August 28th, our next regularly scheduled. I was curious if the group would like to do our normal cadence, or if I should poll a different time, or if anybody wanted to talk about that. I thought I'd.
Well, let's see if other folks can't make it.
Great, we'll just go from there,
Just
just go from
see,
there.
yeah.
Perfect, great. Thank you, that's all I've got.
Yeah, thank you. The only thing I would add that's not on the agenda is, we had kind of floated the idea of having a vice chair for this committee.
Yeah,
I don't know what that means yet. I'm not sure what's allowed, like if I can just say I like a vice chair and I appoint somebody or if money or whatever, but. You know, the committee's getting large enough. I know we're not a quorum today, but we have been getting large enough with enough attendance where I think it warrants a vice chair. And we're also, I'm just trying to find ways to get folks. As much as I love, Kelsey and Hamani and myself, well, I don't love myself, but to involve in the leadership of the commission and its committees. So, folks are interested in chairing. The vice chairing this committee, then let me know. Question mark,
sure. And I'll work on the process to clarify
Yeah.
how that would work.
but think about that if you're interested in that. Okay, any member remarks or announcements?
I do. I would like to, again, Joaquin, thank you, so much for, presenting that information at, the council meeting on Monday. You did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
With the points that you highlighted, the way that you worded that, and just, kind of like the flow of the entire presentation. I thought it was, very well received. I was proud to see that we had, a lot more engagement, from counselors, this year, than last year, and appreciate you taking the lead on.
That's sweet of you to say.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Robert did a wonderful job preparing the slides, which were beautiful and were great. So thank you for that
Appreciate that.
very much. Any other member remarks or announcements? Getting an applaud, something from Hamadi? Well, hearing none, I have no problem letting you go 5 minutes early, and thank you for being here and for the conversation. Linnell, it was always good to see you, and take care and have a good night.